So my name is James Richardson. I started a company called Optimising in about 2008. We're based in Richmond, just across the road from Plant Road Oval. And yeah, so we're an online marketing company specialising in SEO, which we'll be talking about today in great detail. Google AdWords, social media marketing, website development, mobile applications. So basically anything to do with a digital presence that a business or a club or an organisation might need. Today the topic is going to be focused on startup businesses. So the things you need to know if you're just starting a business or have had a website for a little while and are looking to, I guess, improve your presence, improve, I guess, the persona that you see. So speaking today will be myself, so I'll be doing a few of the slides. Also my colleagues Nathan Davies and Lachlan Wells, they'll be up at certain stages to speak on different elements of online marketing. So I'll go over some real basics just to start us off. I'll explain what is SEO, how do you rank websites, and what do the search results look like. And then the other guys will take over and explain some more detail on how we exactly, I guess, manipulate the websites to make it. So SEO is basically about making your website rank higher in search results. That's the aim that everyone's trying to achieve. And the result of that is getting more traffic, more leads, more sales, more inquiries through your website. And that's the aim. If you have a website, you want to make sure it's working for you, and you want to make sure that people are seeing it so they can inquire and I guess, bring you more business into your company. So in terms of the actual search results, you've probably seen this a million times, and this is not how you will always see it. Google is always playing different types of search results. So sometimes you'll see maps, sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll see pictures, sometimes you'll see Google shopping. It really depends on what you're searching for. Google tries to display search results which match that criteria and show you the kind of information that you want. So if you're searching for, say, an e-commerce product, so I'm searching for, yesterday I was searching for wireless presentation clickers. When I did a search for that on Google, I saw up the top the actual pictures of the clickers that went through the website, and that's Google Shopping. So that's like another feature. If you're running an e-commerce store, Google Shopping is something you need to look at. But on a really basic level, so up the top here we've got the paid ads. So on the top and the right hand side we've got paid ads. That's generally how they display. So we won't get paid ads today, but basically every time someone clicks on one of those ads, that advertiser is paying for that user to come to their website. Now it could be between anywhere from 5 cents up to some industries that are 30, 40, 50 bucks per click. So it really depends on what industry you're in. Down below there we've got the SEO listed. So we've got Google Maps listing there, and also the normal organic. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, how to get your website ranked higher in those areas there.
My name's Nathan, so I usually get involved with the early stages of our clients' campaigns. Obviously, a big part of that is choosing the right keywords. It's really essential for SEO, speaking the right language of who you want to come to your website. It's a bit of a different beast, I guess, compared to what it was a few years ago, keyword research, where you would just try and get every iteration of every type of search term and saturate that all on your website. Right with the page for each of those keywords. So now you have to be a bit smarter, try and get into the mind the intent of the searcher when you're doing keyword research and map it all out, but I'll get on to that in a second. Choosing the right keywords should not be something that you just do at the start and then ignore. Especially if you're a startup, you want to be, and especially if you're a startup with a brand new product as well, that maybe people don't know about, searching about, you need to be constantly searching, trying to work out how you're going to solve those search problems, I guess. It's what sort of language they use and match that up to what you're offering. So I'll run through how we go about it as an agency. Now there's generally, when looking at keywords, there's usually 5 criteria that I like to look at. Fairly obvious to some, but it's good to sort of have this in mind when you're going through the list. So obviously search volume. There's no point in trying to get found terms that no one's actually searching for, so it's really important. Relevance, so don't try and go after keywords that aren't really relevant to your business just because you're chasing traffic. You'll annoy people if you're going after non-buying terms that go to your website and you're purely on e-commerce sites. So just try and match up the intent of the search with what you're doing. Kind of leads into the third one, which is the type of keyword. Are they buying keywords, research keywords? Again, just try and match up the intent. Opportunity. Look, maybe chasing big volume and generic keywords might have lots of sexy traffic, but at the end of the day, are you going to be able to compete with who's on the front page? At least try and get some more niche keywords in there, long tail keywords, get some quick results. Try and diversify as much as possible with the keyword there. And obviously consistency with your own marketing goals. So again, pretty obvious, focusing on the right terms to get return on investment.
So we're going to go through some basics of On Page SEO now. And just before I get into it, there is a lot with On Page SEO, and the solution to a website's On Page SEO issues is unique. So all websites are slightly different. You might use the same platform, like a lot of people use WordPress for their platform. I'm sure a lot of you use WordPress as their standard platform. The only issue, I guess, like based on how the templates are made, based on who developed it, what kind of content you've got in it, there are going to be different solutions to the SEO issues that you may face. So on a really basic level, if you're sort of doing your own SEO, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you've got the metadata, which is something that hasn't really changed for the past 15 years in terms of being on the page. That's been something that's been a constant for all this time. We've got the heading tags, which is basically, I'll go through in a second, content, navigation, and then we've got some advanced on-page things that you can do to take things one step further. So the metadata is something that you probably see quite often. So what I'm showing you here is just a search result that I just quickly did. It's actually a whole one that displays quite differently now, but basically what I'm trying to say is that your metadata is what's generally displayed in the search results. So basically you've got your meta title up here. You guys, how many of you are using WordPress for your website platform? Okay, that's a pretty good number. So with WordPress, it's pretty easy to sort of get in there and adjust your page title for your website, and also on a page-by-page basis. So if you use sort of an off-the-shelf SEO tool like your Yoast or all-in-one SEO, whatever you use, on a page and post level, you can adjust the page title for every page on the website. So the next one we've got is heading tags. So basically, if you think about this as when you've got a page of content on your website, think about it if you're doing, say you're putting together a proposal document in Word. So you've got your different styled fonts for the headings of different sections, then you've got the paragraph headings. Same goes for your website. So you want to make sure that the content within the page is appropriately labeled. So the way that you do this through WordPress and through any HTML coding is through the header tags. So we've got your H1 tag, which is the most important header on the page. You've got your H2 tags, which is, I guess, preceding the second most important sort of content within the page. You've got to make sure that these, ideally you want to try and get the keywords into these heading tags. So you want to sort of use that in conjunction with the title tags and the meta description to, I guess, illustrate to Google the theme of that page. So you're going to make sure that they're done properly. The next, yes.
What's your thoughts on the sort of with the H options and H3 and H4?
Yeah, well, I guess that's more like a styling thing. It doesn't really matter. Like you can use the H1 and then the H3 tag if that's how your web developers put your website together. It's not really a big deal as long as you use them, I guess, in the right order. So the most important is H1, and then if you just say you don't have a H2, just go straight to H3. It doesn't really matter so much as long as the hierarchy is correct. Another question about info? Cool, so now we're at content. So content's really important to have on your website. Obviously it's important to have relevant content and useful content, not content for the sake of having extra pages on your website. So obviously, depending on the business, depends on the type of content you have on your website, and it's more on the types of users. So I guess you need to think about it from a user perspective. So what kind of content would your users want to find when they get to your website, and what would they find useful? So if they're coming to your website through search results, what are they expecting to find? And you want to make sure you answer all the questions that they might have when they come to your website. So things like on a real basic level, you want to make sure you have like an About Us page, products, testimonials, FAQs, case studies. There's lots of different things that you can put. Obviously, if you're an e-commerce business, it's even better because you can have sort of category pages, all your product pages, all the descriptions of the products. Sort of makes it nice and useful like that. Cool, so navigation, very important. May seem like something really basic, but you want to make sure there's really good navigation on your website. So this is number one for the users, so to make sure they can easily get to all the content on your website. Number two is for Google, so you want to make sure that that your navigation is clearly visible, well linked, and all text based. So you want to make sure, so Google uses your navigation as, I guess, another way to get to all pages on your website, so you want to make sure that it's all text based. Obviously it also uses the sitemaps and all that sort of stuff, but having simple text navigation on your website is still an important way that it sort of crawls the entire website. So yeah, that's fairly easy. Just make sure you don't have any flash menus. If they're, you can sort of do clever things with CSS to make your menus look nice if you're worried about images, but don't make the, I guess, the buttons for your top navigation images. And from a user point of view, you want to make sure that your main navigation is above the fold, like as close to the top of the page as you can. The further down you hide it, the harder it's going to be for anyone to sort of navigate around your website. So for these advanced practices, it's fairly straightforward, and I know you might have done some of these already, but the number one is install Google Analytics. If any of you haven't got this installed now, go away and do it straight away. I guess this is a really great insight into, I guess, how many visitors are coming to your website, where they're coming from, what devices they're on, what content they visit. We get limited keyword data now, so since the privacy settings came into Google, it's not as insightful in terms of the actual keyword data that we get anymore, but you still do get some keyword data, which is nice. So install that, set that up properly, and sort of monitor that over a regular basis. You want to make sure you've set up Google Search Console, which is formerly Webmaster Tools. A lot of you probably still know it as that. Webmaster Tools or Search Console is really important. Basically, this is a message portal that Google has between you and your website. So it'll tell you whether it's seeing any errors, whether there's any issues, whether there's any sort of penalties, sort of anything that you really should fix that Google's sort of going to draw your attention to. This is the way that they'll do it, and it's the only way that they'll do it. So that's really important that you install that. You also get some good sort of search data on your website from that as well. So we'll actually get a little bit of keyword data through the Search Console, which is nice. So it's very important to set that up. So those two are definitely must-dos. Making sure, I'll go over this a little more in a second, but making sure, even if you're a business that services national customers all around Australia, you want to make sure that you do have a location and a phone number on your website. Ideally, you want these to be local. Now, I know some of you might not think it's that relevant depending on what you do, but Google still uses that as a signal of trust, having a local business and a local phone number.
In a way that's perhaps visible on your page.
So, no.
You cannot do white text on white background.
No, you definitely can't do that. So if you're sort of a national-based business, yeah. So Google always likes a little. There's no real good. We spoke here last year as well. We had it's always a big issue, and there's nothing's been solved in the last 12 months around it either. There's always going to be issues around locations. Google uses location as a big indicator of that you're a trustworthy business. Yes, I totally get that it's not relevant to some businesses that might post stuff overseas and post stuff, interstate. Ways that some businesses overcome that is set up sort of locations or satellite offices or addresses in different states, and then has sort of a local phone number in each of those areas. It's doable depending on the budget, and then you can verify Google Maps.
Just using a Skype number?
You can use a Skype number, but you still need an address. So you can so you can use the number's fine as long as it comes through, because that's always going to be displayed on the search results. So yeah, it's a tricky one. Yeah.
So I don't have an address.
Yeah. So basically for the address thing, in an ideal world, the same address that's listed on your website correlates to your Google Maps listing. And I'll go over this a bit more in a second. You can, and I understand you probably don't want to list your home address on your website, but you can verify your Maps listing without it being on your website, and then hide the address, and it'll just have the suburb.
I can't get on Google Maps because I don't have a street address for my business.
Yeah, but you could verify your home address and then hide that address on Google Maps.
I tried that. They don't even send Google to my home address.
Oh.
Because I think they know it's a home address. I had tried it. I haven't.
Is it like a apartment building type thing?
I've tried both. I got an apartment building address and a suburb street address, and they have not sent.
Have you tried multiple times? Sometimes the cards can take a while to come through, like 5.
It has been a month.
Oh yeah, no, it can take like 6 weeks sometimes. But if it's been 2 weeks, I'd probably request it again.
It has been 4 weeks.
Yeah, request it again. It'll probably come out. But yeah, sometimes it can take 6 weeks. Depends what backlog they've got with Maps postcards.
Yeah, just one observation I had setting up as well is that Google is focused on trust and their clients, which is the searching client, not on the businesses as a client, unless you pay for advertising.
Yep.
So a lot of clients who are searching want to have that trust factor, and matching the local address with the local phone number, the local person's name, all these sorts of things is an essential component of Google.
Yep.
So if you do not have a presence that is locally trusted, how would you convince Google to trust you?
Yeah, that's all it's trying to do. Like it is like, I guess the objective that Google has with this whole address and local phone number thing is good, I guess, but it can be frustrating for businesses. Yeah, it's just something that we all need to overcome. You touched on something there. If any of you guys run AdWords and you're having problems with your Google Maps, sometimes your Google AdWords account manager can help you with your map stuff, because you can actually call the AdWords people because you're paying them money. And they sometimes follow up stuff and fix things for you. It's amazing what they'll do when you pay them some money. So yeah, that's a good little tip if you have an account manager, which most people do now. So what was I up to? So yeah, making it load fast. So a fast loading website is very important. Everyone's got pretty quick internet speeds these days, so you can have sort of bigger files on the website, but you want to make sure that it is loading fast, and that it's a good user experience for everyone when they get to the website. Anything that takes more than like 5 seconds is the absolute max these days. Like anything more than that, it's too slow. Just got one here.
Where you have your website hosted?
Yep.
Is it a significant effect?
So hosting location, it's been going up and down onto how relevant the actual location is. The way I consider it being, the location is important because the more locally your website's hosted, the faster it loads. That's how I would more consider it. There's sort of debate whether the actual location of the server makes a difference to ranking. Google went back and forth whether that's true. I would just say we generally host locally to where the business is located, because that's generally where their customers are, and then the website's going to load faster. So that's where I think. So that's what I would go for. But if you're based in Melbourne, and some of your customers are based in and you're sort of servicing Australia-wide, having a Melbourne or Sydney-based server is going to be way better. It's going to be faster and faster for users.
I was going to say to you quick, I remember the old days when you'd start up your computer, you turn it on, you go off, get a cup of coffee, come back, and try then you hope that your Windows page. So 5 seconds is just
so loading fast, and also making sure you have a really good mobile and tablet experience, what I touched on before. A really high percentage of search these days, and especially research on businesses, is done on the mobile or tablet device. Because a lot of people are doing, the 2-screen experience while they're sitting there watching TV. They're also searching stuff on their iPad or their laptop, stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you do have a good mobile and tablet experience, because a lot of people, although they may not contact you on those devices, they are looking at your business on those devices, and they may contact you later. Also, you want to make sure it's easy for them to call you from their mobile device, so that we do search.
Just a quick question, if I can, on that,
Sure.
Jamie. If someone was converting
their old website
Yep.
to a responsive design,
Yep.
do you recommend 301 redirects
Well, you shouldn't need to. You shouldn't need
from
to.
it's a different platform?
Oh, okay. So ideally, you don't want to be doing a different platform. So you're saying you're rebuilding the whole website, or you're just doing a mobile
From
version?
Adobe to WordPress.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you'd if you use it, so Business Catalyst, using the Adobe Business Catalyst system.
In the past, I don't know.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so generally if you're going from one system to a different system, generally you're going to have to 301 a lot of the pages anyway. So you're going to have to do a lot of 301s just because the URL will have a different structure on the old system to
Do
the
you
new.
think Google penalises from 301 since
No.
there's some loss?
If you don't have to do 301s, don't do them. But that's the way that Google wants you to, I guess, signify that a page has moved. So you're not going to have there's not going to be big issues with doing 301s. There will be a ranking drop. So when you do a lot of 301s, you're always going to have some sort of ranking drop. Generally it's temporary and it shouldn't happen for too long, and you should pop back up to exactly where you were before, because doing 301s is a permanent redirect, telling Google. But yeah, there will be some downtime in rankings. It's impossible to overcome that. So these are some of the things that I've talked about and Nathan's talked about as well. So that we've got these links in the notes that we'll send you. But yeah, Search Console, Analytics, Moz, which I don't know if Google might have been to, just a really good source for basics to more advanced stuff regarding search and optimization. Ahrefs, which is a good one for link research, which Nathan talked about before. Pingdom, which is a good little one to test the page load speed. There's a lot of different ones, but that's a fairly easy one. There's Google Page Speed Analysis, which is also good. And then we've got the Google Structured Testing tool, which basically what that does is that sort of tests whether your address is easily readable on your website. So I'm going to go a little bit about Google Maps, local SEO, Google Plus, whatever you want to call it, like the actual local results that sort of display in the search engine results. There's probably a lot more to this. I could do a lot more slides on it, but I'll just sort of go through it briefly. So if you have any more questions, and we've already spoken about some anyway. So basically the ways to rank locally for local search terms. So basically a local search term these days can almost be anything. So anything that Google interprets as someone wanting a local-based business or service. So it used to be something that had a geographic term on the end. Now that's not always the case. You don't need to do geographic searches on the end. It can be anything that Google considers you want a local business for.
Yeah, it's when you say phone number, does
Yep.
that just mean a 03 phone number, given that the local Melbourne number
Yep.
can be anywhere across Melbourne?
Yeah. So just an 03 number. That's what it likes. If you're servicing Melbourne-based customers, you need an 03. Like ideally, you want an 03-based number. So you want to make sure, as I was saying before, you want to make sure this address and phone number is listed on your website. The really important thing, and you might not think this is a big deal, but consistency of address is like one of the most important things that you can do. So the way that address is formatted on the page, so even things like having space between 03 and your phone number, having like a comma after your street name, things like that actually make a difference, because you want to make sure there's consistency. And it makes it easy for Google to see that consistency across all the listings of your address on different sources. You want to make sure you've got a Google Maps listing. Make sure that's verified, all updated, all the photos, everything's all right on that. You want to make sure you've got listings on other review websites. So you've got I'll go through a few in a second, but sort of like True Local, and even sort of a white pages listing, any sort of verified trusted source where you can have a listing on other occurrence of your business company details. I'm not really fussed about, we're not sort of looking to get a lot of traffic to the website from that at all. It's more just so Google can check these other sources, see, hey, they're listed here, 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 and here. That matches up with their Google Maps profile. That also matches the details on their website. So then we can kind of trust that that address is real and that business is accurate. And you want to make sure you have reviews on your Google Maps listing. So I guess that's something that a lot of people forget about these days, and sort of, they update their listing and then they never look at it again. It's really important that you get your customers, and real customers, not just your mates or your friends or your sister or your wife,
You want to make sure they're real reviews of real customers. Reviewing your product or service on your Google Maps listing.